Hey there, knitters. Welcome to episode 14 of Knit Talk with a Tech Editor. I'm Megan of the Unapologetic Knitter, and I'm a tech editor. Today we're going to have a really brief chat about the tubular cast-on method. This past Wednesday's episode, I talked all about binding off using the tubular method for the magic loop method. There we go. But today I wanted to cover a question that not necessarily a question that I see, but my best tips maybe is a better way to say it, for casting on using the tubular cast on method. So the tubular cast on is not only an aesthetically pleasing cast on, but a really functional cast on as well. The stitches, as far as the aesthetics go, the stitches in the knit columns of the right side of the work seem to flow seamlessly into the knit columns on the wrong side of the work. This is a very common method for edges of commercially made garments and works just as well in our handmade work as well. In addition to being a really pretty cast on, it's also really functional for us when we're looking for stretchy cast on edges for projects. It's great for the top of socks, or cuffs, or even the brim of a hat. However, because it's so stretchy, we do have to consider a little bit how we're going to put those stitches on our needles. So I don't personally have a technique tutorial video to show you how to do the tubular cast on, but Pearl Soho has a wonderful technique video that I have linked in the description below the video. So if you're not familiar with the technique, I recommend going over there after this video just to check it out because it makes a beautiful project. But casting on, for me, I just learned this method about 4 or 5 years ago, was a bit of a lesson in frustration. What is not often discussed about the tubular cast on method is the tensioning issues. So many of us, myself included, are very accustomed to a long tail cast on or the twisted German cast on. I use both of those daily, and every time you place a new stitch on the needle, you can secure it. As you pull on both strands of the yarn, it locks the stitch onto the needle almost like a slip stitch, so you can make sure it's nice and snug. With a tubular cast on method, you're not actually locking them in the same way. You're twisting the yarns together, but you aren't creating that knot effect. So tension can be a really big issue for a lot of people. So my two best tips are twofold. The first one is lessening the frustration of it. If you have a straight needle in the size that you need for your project, I strongly recommend casting on over a straight needle. Because the thickness of the needle doesn't change all the way down the length of the needle, your stitches that you're placing on the needle have less of a tendency to twist around the needle. And when I was learning the process, I found that as I cast on and the stitches moved onto the cable, they would twist, and I had a really hard time visually deciphering which stitch needed to go where, so twisting them back into position. The second tip that I have, and I'm not the first person to mention this, is going down a needle size just for the step of placing the stitches on your needles. So I'll have an example up on the screen, but essentially there are two parts of the tubular cast on. There are the actual placing of the stitches onto the needle, and then there are two setup rows that are worked once the stitches are on the needle. So to use the smaller needle size, let's just use an example and say you're working a project that is a worsted weight and your main fabric needle is a US 8 or a 5mm. Your ribbing needle that you're going to use either at your neckline or your cuffs, wherever you're casting on, would be two needle sizes smaller. Let's say a US 6 or a 4.5 size needle, 3.5. Wait, why can I not remember? A US 6 or 4mm needle, sorry about that. To cast on the stitches, I recommend going down one needle size from your ribbing needle. So if you caught all of that in that muddle of talking there, the ribbing needle is a US 6 or a 4mm, so you'd go down to a US 5 or a 3.75mm just to cast on the stitches. So you would cast on with that smallest needle just to place the loops on the needle. When it comes time to work your tubular setup rows, you'll change to your ribbing size needle. So you've only used that smallest needle for getting the loops on your needle. Once you've done the 2 reeler setup rows, you will proceed into your ribbing, and once you're done the ribbing, then you'll change to your main fabric needle. Now, if you don't naturally have a loose cast on, or you forget to cast on with that smallest needle size, it's totally okay. I have seen that question a few times recently. It probably won't make that big an impact on the final project that you're working on. I've just found that it works really well for me in terms of keeping the stitches nice and tidy and preventing them from twisting around the cable as much. So this coming Wednesday, I have a new Knit Talk episode where we are going to look at brioche, and just so you get to know your brioche fabric a little bit better. It won't be technique specific, although I have tutorials on all of the brioche techniques that I know as well, but really just getting to know your brioche so you feel more confident in your skills. As I've mentioned previously, if you find value in my videos, I would really appreciate it if you would hit the like button on today's video and subscribe to my channel. It tells the little algorithms that run YouTube that we're doing a good job here and refers my videos to more knitters, and it gets me to help more people. And as always, if you have any discussions that you would like to, or topics that you would like to see discussed in future episodes, please feel free to leave a comment below or send in a submission form linked in the description below. Thank you so much for being here, and happy knitting.